Hey friends, it's Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. I was doing some of my healing therapies today, and it put me in mind of helping you get your health care and your medical care without discrimination. We received a very troubling email from a desperate fellow, and I've spoken about this at length over the last 3 years about how to get medical care. But I realize that not everybody has been studying that. And I realize that people still think that they can go into a medical setting, breathing oxygen as a pure blood without being assaulted by some sort of nasal swab. And the fact is that just is not happening, even here going into year 4. So I'm going to give you my recommendations and some things that you can do right on the spot. What is so distressing to me is when I get these frantic emails when the people are at the ER. So I'm going to start out in just a moment, letting you know that you need to prepare. Now, before we get underway, let me thank the sponsor of this afternoon's live stream. And we are going to hop right on over to noblegoldinvestments.com. And what I want to tell you is that I've got the info for you right here. Oh my gosh, I want to make sure that I bring you the right info. So did you know that gold prices could surge to $4,000 an ounce in 2023? Noble Gold Investments has all of the details. If 2022 taught us anything, it taught us a lot of things, didn't it? It is that tangible assets are the only assets that you can really count on, like gold. So what are you waiting for? Thousands of people have started making a move towards a secure retirement, and you can join them by opening a gold IRA or a silver IRA with Noble Gold Investments. And if you get in before the end of this month, you are going to get this incredibly free 1/4 ounce American Gold Eagle coin with every qualified IRA of $50,000. There you have it. You cannot go wrong with Noble Gold. And you can go here to noblegoldinvestments.com. You can read their thousands of 5-star reviews, and you can also give them a call at 877-646-5347. And again, past performance is not guaranteed. And of course, there's no guarantee on your investment. So check them out. You have nothing to lose. noblegoldinvestments.com. Friends, let's talk about something that is deeply distressing to me. That is when I hear from people that are being denied medical care at an emergency room. Now, I will say that it is a different scenario if you are being denied care at your dentist, unless it's an emergency, or you're going in for some type of diagnostic test or what have you. And the reason why is because in those settings where it's not an urgent issue, you can usually reschedule, maybe you can delay. It's possible that you could find even another medical provider. And I have a lot of information about what to do if you want to educate your MD or your dentist or the diagnostic center on your rights and how they are required to accommodate you. I've got a lot of free videos here on the YouTube channel, although a lot of them are moving on over to my private platform because YouTube is still being very, very strict with my videos. So I am keeping all the up-to-date ones here, but the older ones from a couple of years ago, a lot of those are coming down and they're going on my private channel, which is peggyhall.tv. And I also have a private class if you want me to go with you step by step and show you exactly how to file these complaints, where to file these complaints, what to put in your letters when you were going after your doctor or dentist or something along those lines. But that's not what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about being denied medical care in an emergency room setting. A little bit of background, you may know that my mom was an emergency room nurse for 40 years. She was not a part of the mainstream medical merry-go-round. In fact, a lot of what she saw and what she learned about medicine made her adopt more of a natural, holistic approach to healing. In that she was in trauma medicine, that suited her well. So she was not about, filling prescriptions and that kind of stuff. It was fixing the broken legs and stitching people up and that kind of stuff. So I have that outlook from my upbringing in terms of, medicine. And I've also visited emergency rooms many times as a healthy person, because I would go to visit my mom, or maybe she would need to be dropped off or picked up, or there was some kind of event there. So I'm very familiar with sort of the emergency room setting. I have visited an emergency room a couple of times in my life. Nothing that was life-threatening, but it was urgent. And I thought it was life-threatening at the time, but that was many years ago. Anyhow, I digress. What I want you to know is this. Number one, you need to prepare in advance for any emergency. I've talked about emergency management before in terms of what's going on in our world and how ridiculous it is that we could actually be in a bona fide emergency 4 years after the emergency was called. Anyone that has studied, or anyone that even has critical thinking or common sense, understands that an emergency by its very nature is temporary and it's urgent. And in the study of emergency management, there are 4 phases that are generally recognized. And number one is you prepare. You prepare for the emergency. You don't allow it to just catch you off guard. Here in California, we are always being told to prepare for, earthquake emergencies. And I suppose now we need to prepare for fire emergencies and flood emergencies and the electricity going out emergencies and anything else that they can throw at us. But the point is that you prepare. The second is what you do. Second phase is what happens during the actual emergency. And that's where in the earthquake, things are falling off the shelves, glass is being broken, you're taking cover, you're watching out for your animals and your children and your family, and maybe you're shutting off the water or the gas or something. So during the emergency, that when it's happening, that's the phase 2. Phase 3 is the aftermath. That is the recovery. That's when you're picking up the broken glass. You're turning the gas back on. Is your house in working order? No. Are the roads open? Possibly not. Are you still going to need to get insurance and money and all of that? Yes. Is it still an emergency? No, it's the recovery. It doesn't mean that you are completely in the clear. And I'm going to use this example in the emergency room. And then the 4th phase is the mitigation. And that's where you look at how you prepared, how you handled yourself during the emergency, how you handled yourself during the recovery, and then how you handled yourself during, the mitigation is, where can I go from here? How can I handle things better in the future? What phase are we in, generally speaking, in our society these days? It sure as heck ain't phase 2, I'll tell you that. It is possibly, some people would argue that it's the recovery. I would say that it is the mitigation, where there are plans that I don't agree with in terms of what to do going forward. So I just want to make that clear. So in our own lives, we need to follow those steps as well. Number one is prepare. So I have given this advice again and again, and I will continue to give it again and again, because I don't want anyone to suffer in the emergency room. And I'm going to be reading to you a letter that just came into my email recently, and how disturbing this was to me, and why I decided to do yet another video on how to get medical care without discrimination, especially in the ER. So what I recommend, there's a couple of things. Number one, within a 50-mile radius, maybe a 100-mile radius, depending if you live in a rural area or what have you, you want to contact all of the urgent care centers and all of the emergency rooms. It's been my experience from hearing from hundreds, if not thousands, of healthy Americans that, generally speaking, the urgent cares are going to be more amenable to those of us that like to breathe oxygen and keep our bodies pure. So it's the county emergency rooms or the large emergency rooms in the cities that tend to be stricter in discriminating against you. Again, this information comes from many emails and the information that many of you have sent me. And by all means, please tell me how things are going in your neck of the woods. Have you been to an ER? Have you gotten care? Were you discriminated against, harassed? Were you, did you feel that you were under duress to comply with their restrictions? So please let me know in a comment below. So number one, you contact in writing, you send a letter to the hospital administrator or the director of the urgent care. You find out And again, this is only going to be maybe 5 or 6 at the most locations in your area. If you travel, think of where you typically go. And if there are other emergency rooms or urgent care centers that you would want to contact. And I recommend that you write them a letter. And this is what you're going to say in the letter. You're going to say, I am requesting what accommodations you will allow. I'm not giving you the right phrasing here. I am writing to request the accommodations as required by law that you will adapt or you will offer if I need to come to your emergency room. And then you state, I do not, and you state what it is. So personally, I breathe oxygen. You see, not only do I have a religious expression that requires me to breathe, because that's how I worship God. I worship God by breathing, but I also have a medical condition. And that medical condition, oddly enough, is also breathing. And what happens is, if I were, and I'm only doing this hypothetically, well, actually, I can tell you that one time about, oh my gosh, 5 or 6 years ago, hubby and I were cleaning out the attic. And he had the ladder and he said, you better put on a mask because it's really dusty up there. So he gave me, like a painter's mask or something. This is 5 years ago. And as I'm climbing up the ladder, I couldn't even make it 3 or 4 steps up the ladder. I had to tear that thing off because already I couldn't breathe. Already I felt that I was suffocating. I did not want to keep that on. I would rather breathe the dust. So I know personally that having my airways blocked is going to prevent me from breathing, and that is going to create a medical emergency. So you can write whatever you want in your letter, but you inform them that if you need to show up at an emergency room or urgent care, either as a patient or as an advocate, as a companion for someone who is getting care. And that's very important to state, that you are requesting their accommodation required by law, because you cannot be denied service based on your medical condition and based on your religion. That would be like saying St. Joseph's Hospital is a Catholic hospital, so it does not serve Jewish, Muslim, Mormon, Hindu, whatever. They say, oh no, we only serve Catholics. Imagine if that were the case. It's illegal. All right. So it's illegal to deny you medical care. And I already know, I don't even need to read the comments, and you're going to say, Peggy, it doesn't work. They denied me anyway. Hang on, because I'm not done. There are steps that do work, and I know they work because people have told me that they've been in these situations and they work. And it's very likely you didn't go through all of the steps that I'm about to share. So the reason I'm saying this is I don't want your comment to negatively influence someone else who is just getting their gumption up to actually stand up against this. There are probably thousands of healthy Americans that agree with me, that believe in their rights, that stand for their rights, but they don't know how to do it, or they don't have the courage to go into these places, and they get hoodwinked, and they get coerced, and they get harassed and discriminated against. And before you know it, they just give in, give up, and give over. I don't want that to happen to people. So I implore you to not talk about these. Let me put it this way. I implore you to hold your comments until you can give me proof that you have followed every single one of these steps and it didn't work, because I've never heard of that. All right. So here we go. Number one, you do this all in advance, and you get a letter back in writing from these organizations, from these institutions, that say you will have to wait in your car until you're called, or you will have to clear out the waiting room. You'll have to come in through the back door. And I'm going to tell you that I know about this because I've had people who have done it. So I want to be here to encourage you that you can do it. They will offer you these accommodations. And if you don't hear back from them, you pick up the phone, you write to them again. And The second time you write to them, you can say, if I don't hear from you this time, I'm going to have to send a copy of this letter to the medical licensing board of the state. And I'm going to have to send a letter to the hospital licensing board of the state. And I'm going to have to send a letter to the insurance board of the state. And those are some of the things that you can do to let them know that you are serious. The other thing that you can put in the letter is you can reference the patient's Bill of Rights. And the Patient's Bill of Rights is a policy that hospitals have adopted all over the United States. It was written into healthcare regulations over many years, and different states and different counties and different hospitals have a slight variation, but basically it goes along the lines of you have the right to receive medical care, and this is basically urgent medical care without discrimination. Now, the other thing that's very important is these Patient's Bill of Rights also say that you have the right to have an advocate with you. So they cannot tell you that your loved one has to stay outside. And if you're the loved one, they cannot tell you that you have to stay outside. It's against these regulations. And you have well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll get ahead of myself. If you find yourself there and you haven't done step one, which is to get everything in writing, then you say to the charge nurse, the hospital administrator, the highest person who's in charge of that facility, you tell them that you want your Patient's Bill of Rights read to you. Let them read it out loud to you and have them pause where it says, are you ready for it? This is the most important. You have the right of no consent. You have the right to refuse any medical treatment without being denied additional medical treatment. Here's a simple example. Someone breaks their leg. They go into the emergency room and they take an x-ray. The person is in pain and the doctor says, I'm going to give you a shot of morphine. You have the right to refuse that shot of morphine. The doctor cannot refuse to put a cast on your leg just because you refuse the shot of morphine. That is illegal. Further, just as an aside, let's say that you get the cast on your leg and they send you on your merry way. Is your leg healed? No. Is it still an emergency? No. That's the nature of an emergency. It's immediate, it's urgent, and it is of a short duration. So think in terms of emergency room visits when you are having conversations with people about these endless, eternal emergencies. So let's continue with the Patient's Bill of Rights. You have the right to have an advocate. You have the right to refuse any treatment without being denied another treatment. I hope you're taking notes. You can just do an internet search in your state. Patient's Bill of Rights, Illinois. Patient's Bill of Rights, California. Patient's Bill of Rights, Orange County, San Diego. Patient's Bill of Rights for that hospital that you hopefully are not going to be visiting. There's another thing in that Patient's Bill of Rights that's very, very important. And it says that you have the right to refuse. You have the right of no consent. Ready? Are you ready? This is the crux of the matter, friends. I hope you're going to be well educated on this. It's a simple concept. Remember, truth is simple. It's all their fancy lies that they're spinning that are convoluted and confusing, and you can't keep up on them. Truth is simple. And here's the simple truth. The Patient's Bill of Rights clearly states that you have the right to refuse any medical experiment, period. Now, let's get into the weeds here, shall we? The suffocation devices have never been approved by the FDA for what they're being used for. Are you with me? That puts them in the category of a medical experiment. There is no FDA approval for the use of that device in the way that they have intended it. Okay. Number two, the nasal assault before you get your medical care. That has never been approved by the FDA. There is an emergency authorization for the assault. I don't even think there's an emergency authorization for the suffocation device, but there definitely is an emergency authorization, but it doesn't matter. There is no FDA license, which puts it in the category of a medical experiment. You're going to stand your ground And you're going to say, where in this document does it say that you have the right to coerce me into a medical experiment? Now, you know, and I know what they're going to say. 3 little words. It's an emergency. Oh, that's so funny. Nowhere in the law does it say, and nowhere in the Patient's Bill of Rights does it say, except in the case of an emergency. Now, you don't argue with them. You ask them, oh, where is it here? I don't see the part. I have my glasses, but I don't see the part where it says, except in the case of an emergency, because it doesn't. Now, here's where it gets even better. So you do all of that in writing. You send these letters and you get a letter back from those urgent cares and the ER with a signature that says you will not be denied medical treatment if you end up in one of these places. That's basically what you're saying. I want it signed and affirmed and confirmed that and you could list all the names of your family members, will not be denied treatment if I am in need of treatment at your center, and you want to get that in writing. And then just like you keep your driver's license on you, well, I know a lot of you don't have driver's license or license plates, what have you. So maybe you don't want to keep the papers on you. Maybe keep it on your phone. But I recommend, if you want to get medical care without being discriminated against, you bring this document to show them that you've already settled it. It's already a done deal. Because my friends, when you are in pain, when it is a true emergency, when a loved one is suffering, the last thing you want to do probably is go through all this rigmarole. So you do it in advance. Now, let's talk about another step. I want to bring you over to thehealthyamerican.org. This is something that you can do as a backup. All right. And let me share my screen. Whoops. If I ever accidentally stop the live stream, I'll start up again. Okay, let me share my screen. And we're going to go over to thehealthyamerican.org. And if you click under products and classes, all right. And then what I have for you is an informational document. Well, here's if you don't want to consent to the nasal testing. That is very, very helpful. These are informational documents that contain the laws in your state that protect you from being discriminated against. Now, I want you to understand that this is not a legal instrument. I am not an attorney. What I did with my team is compile. In fact, let's just click through. All right. Probably you don't need it in Iowa, but it says this is an informational and educational document that states your legal, federal, religious exemption based on the authority of state and federal laws. It does not guarantee your entrance into any establishment, although many people use it for that purpose. This document can be used to communicate and notify business owners, merchants, managers, agents, and others of your rights that are protected, secured, and guaranteed by law, including your right to free and equal access to any business establishment of any kind whatsoever. Note, this is not to be used for your employer. That is completely different. That would not be sufficient. So what you do is you can access this on the website. We do it as a fundraiser, so I can keep the lights on here and keep doing all this research and so forth. So that's over at thehealthyamerican.org. You click on products and classes, and we have that for, I believe, every state, at least all of the communistic ones. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to fill that out, and it's just a self-attestation that I, Peggy Hall, do not consent, and you check the boxes. So I do not consent to this, 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 and this. And then you put your address and so forth. And then what you do is you don't sign it until you take it to a notary public. A notary public exists for the purpose of attesting and confirming that you are the person who signs the document. So you are signing the document, and then they're going to stamp it with a seal that says that you were the one who wrote these things and signed it. Then I recommend that you put that in a plastic sleeve and you put it on a clipboard, and you have that with you, especially in these tense situations. And then you can point at it and say, look, I have a legal, and this I am doing from a religious viewpoint, because I just based it on the information that I shared with people, that I worship God by breathing. You don't have to belong to any particular religion. I know that many of you will say, because you've said it in the past, Peggy, there you go again, asking for permission. We shouldn't have to have paperwork. Fine. Don't do it. Don't do anything that I'm talking about. And you may have success, especially if you don't live in California. And I wish you well on your journey. This information is for those people like the person that I'm going to read you the email that are caught off guard and they don't know their rights. They may not be as eloquent as you are, and they want to have something in writing that lists all of the laws that are about to be violated, not only on a state level, but on a federal level in terms of you being discriminated against. So that's why I have created this. Again, not a legal instrument, but it is an informational document that you can share with others to educate them about your rights. And they can even take a picture of it if they want to. A lot of these places are operating on fear. Well, they're operating on fear and finance because they're getting money to discriminate against you, although that money is running thin and running out. So luckily, a lot of that has started to recede, but the medical centers are the ones that are still really pushing it. And then they're operating on fear. They think that they're going to be shut down or that somebody else is going to get cooties because you came in breathing oxygen. Friends, it can never, ever, 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 how should I put it? Ever, ever, ever be proven that you personally gave somebody an infectious disease. It's not possible. And there have been laws and court cases about this from the beginning. So it's a very flimsy, ignorant argument based in fear or finance on the part of these organizations that will say, well, you might make somebody sick. Oh, really? Well, you might make somebody discriminated against, which is far more likely. So this is an opportunity for you to educate them and they can take a picture of it. They can put it in the file. And if they think that the FDA or the CDC or the EEOC or the OSHA or whoever is going to come check on their records, they'll have a record that you had a legal federal exemption. All right. So let's continue. You have done your two things now via paperwork. You've written a letter to these places that you've identified. You've gotten a letter back, and then you've got your own document that you can use as backup. All right, let's talk about this poor fellow. I want to see if the email came in. I want to talk about this poor fellow that, okay. Oh, shoot. Okay. Oops. Here it is. Okay. All right, this fellow needs our prayers. He said, "Hi, Peggy. I know you're incredibly busy, but I have sort of an emergency. I had to bring my wife into the ER at my local hospital this morning. I passed through without the suffocation device or anyone even asking me about it. And then I was called out of the room to speak with the doctor about the impending hospitalization. When that call was finished, they would not let me back in to be with my wife. And I had already been there for 4 hours. So he said, I can't wear a mask because of a heart condition. And I showed them proof of my heart condition. They still would not let me in. While I was calling the same doctor back, they kicked me off the property. I am distraught. They have my wife and I can't get back in to be with her. Please help if you can." Friends, it's so distressing to me to get that email, like just, suddenly. This is what I want to prevent. I want to prevent this happening to you. Now, this situation still could have been remedied. So he went in, nobody bothered him, and then they probably noticed and they decided to play hardball because this thing is in these medical settings. Basically, it's like a one-upmanship, right? They've got power over you. You're concerned about yourself or a loved one. You're in pain. It could be life-threatening. And they know that you're not going to fight back like you are, I don't know, at the bank or post office or something like that, where it's not urgent. So they know that they've got you by the ankles. That's what I was going to say. So it's so distressing to me. And here's what's really distressing to me. I don't want to make a generalization, but let me just say that I have helped thousands of medical professionals keep their job without the jab. I know that because I've gotten just an avalanche of thank you letters and emails and comments on social media from people that either studied all of my free information here, or they took one of my educational courses, or they worked with me in the VIP program. And I know that they were able to keep their job because they told me so. So what's distressing to me, and I'm not talking about, I don't know the situation at this hospital. Maybe they all are gung-ho about all that stuff, but I'm just putting out a word for those of you that have been in the position of being discriminated against in order to keep your job. Are you really, I mean, would you be honest with me? Are you really going to kick out the husband of a wife who's about to be hospitalized because he's breathing oxygen? I'm sure that those of you that struggled and fought for your rights to not be discriminated against, I have to believe that you're not the ones discriminating. Am I right? Please don't tell me, well, Peggy, I have to, because it's the policy of the hospital. That's going to require a lot more prayer and a lot more wisdom on your part going forward. So that's just a little bit of an aside. Okay. Let's talk about this fellow now, or you, or others that I've had calling me, texting me from the ER, the same situation. Here's what works. You don't deal with the nurses. You don't deal with the receptionist. You don't deal with the admitting nurse. You don't deal with anyone else other than the hospital administrator. There's a charge nurse. There is always someone on duty who has the highest authority of that hospital. At that time, you have them read you that patient's bill of rights. And when you get to the point of your loved one having the right to have an advocate, you say to them, all right, I would like you in writing to write out for me right now that you are in violation. You are denying my loved one the right to an advocate. And I want the names of everyone here that is denying that in writing. And I want it dated. And then they probably won't do that. Actually, here's what has happened with people. The other thing you say is, now his wife was not being denied medical care, but he was being denied her rights by not being able to be there. So that's why I focused on that. If it's you and they are saying that they're not going to treat you unless you have the, fake, phony, fraudulent assault, or you have to put on the suffocation device, then you have them put that in writing that they are discriminating against you. You can put it in writing and have them sign it. I want the signature and the names of everyone who is denying me medical care. And I also would get out my phone and I would start recording. If there is any scuffling or what have you, you call the sheriff and you say, I'm experiencing trespass. I'm experiencing assault, because remember, assault does, at least in the state of California, they don't have to lay a finger on you. Assault is a type of threatening, like getting all up in your face. So battery is typically where, you're actually beat up. You don't know if somebody's going to throw a punch or if they're going to become hostile. So I would definitely call for backup. Those actions alone have often resulted in a change of the situation. Now, it may be that they're putting you in a different room. I gave a story about a year ago of a fellow that was at more of a rural urgent care, and they wanted to transfer him to a hospital to have some foot surgery. And the doctor, the surgeon, was willing to operate on him, but the hospital would not receive him without the suffocation device and the nasal assault. So the doctor performed that surgery in the urgent care room, and it turned out fine. Now, you may say, well, that's still discrimination. He didn't get what he should have gotten, but at least he did get the medical care. Let me back up a little bit to let you know how I know about this. At the very, 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 very beginning of all this hogwash, when it was, mid 2020, and I actually needed to see a doctor for my foot. And as you know, hashtag never have, never will. I don't suffocate myself. I don't participate with any of the hogwash. I've lived my life normally, and I encourage everyone to do what's right for them. And that's what's right for me. So I went with some deal of trepidation going into the waiting room. It turned out I was the only one there. And I went in with my God-given bare face, and I was sitting there, and I noticed that when I came in, that the couple of, well, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give this away, but you may have noticed this too when you go into places and you see that they don't have the suffocation device on until somebody comes in and then they pull it up. And I'm kind of like, oh, you don't need to do that on my behalf. Well, it turns out the doctor's checking out my foot, and as we're talking, kind of small talk, and this is in the early days. So I felt a little more out there with talking about what I was doing, because I thought everybody thought the way I did. I didn't realize that I was at great risk of, personal harm, of telling people the truth about what was going on. So when he asked me what I did, I said, oh, well, I was normally a college instructor, but they closed the college. So I was still teaching, but I was teaching online, and I was teaching people about our rights. And his eyes lit up, and he said, and he had on a shield, which I think working on somebody's foot, you probably want one on anyway. I mean, I don't begrudge any medical person for wanting a mask, what have you. That's absolutely fine. So his eyes got really big, and he said, and we just hit it off and had this entire conversation about truth and freedom and fraud and fakery and phoniness and all of this. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is an MD who knows the score. And then I said something along the lines of, oh, I'm so glad to make your acquaintance, because I was joking with my husband saying that if anything ever happened to me, he'd have to take me to the vet, because I don't want to go to the emergency room hearing how they're so shut down and they're not, taking patients unless they comply with all of this stuff. And he said, oh, hang on a second. He said, I see patients in the ER and at the hospital, and I perform surgeries there. And let me tell you that there is no requirement that is enforceable for you to do that. They don't want you to know this, but they cannot deny you surgery, diagnostics, treatment, medical care. You stand your ground and you tell them about your patient's Bill of Rights. And then my eyes got big, and I said, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how grateful I am for this information. Now, I knew that we had rights, but I had not been inside an ER for some time. And this was directly from a doctor telling me, you have rights and you stand up for them. Now, there was another story that came to mind very early. And that was somebody emailing me about their father. So the daughter brought the father to the emergency room. And I think the father was having heart palpitations or something. And, a true emergency, an actual, could be life and death emergency. And they went into the emergency room. And of course, they got harassed and discriminated against. And you can't be in here. You got to put on the device. And the father was so disgusted that he just said, he turned around, he walked out. And as he turned his head, he said, I would rather die in my car than comply with tyranny. And he goes to the car, the daughter, walks with him to the car. And the charge nurse comes running out afterwards and said, sir, you cannot be denied treatment. Come with me. I will see to it myself. And she brought him into a room. Friends, whether it's ignorance, whether it's fear, whether it's incompetence, whether it's intentionally trying to get everybody to follow this fraudulent fakery, whatever the reason is, you have rights and you have got to stand up for them. So I've given you how to prepare for it, what to do while you're there, and then let's talk about the recovery. So the recovery phase is, let's say you were denied, and then you have the right to make all of these complaints where you are going to write a letter with all of the facts and all of the feelings, the facts of what happened in the circumstance and how that made you feel. Did you think you were going to die? Did it increase your anxiety? Were you unable to sleep at night? Did you, put all of that in there? And you're going to send a letter to these people that you had write down on the piece of paper, their names, who discriminated against you. And you are going to send them a letter, and you're going to send a letter of complaint to the medical licensing board. Now, I know. When you live in California, the people who are on the medical licensing board are just as bad as those in those that are discriminating against you. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you have it on the record in case you want to go further in terms of doing a claim. And I would also do a claim with your state civil rights agency because your civil rights were discriminated against. An ER cannot say, well, we don't serve Muslims. Well, we don't take children. Well, we don't take white people or black people or those with an accent. It's illegal. And heaven knows if that were the case in California, California is filled with all of the above because that's the law. So friends, I need for you to stand up for yourself. Number one is to be prepared. Number two is to stand your ground. Number three is if you are dealing with criminals who don't care that they're violating the law, you have got to find another location. That's why I said to go to find 4 or 5 different locations, urgent cares, other emergency rooms. Hopefully there's one within a 50-mile radius or something. So that is my hope for you, that this is going to be very helpful for you and that you are going to be able to stay healthy and get the care that you need. Now, before we sign off, I do want to let you know that I had a very strange day in San Diego. So it was strange for many reasons. This is where I was going to for some of my healing therapies, which are definitely working. And it was not raining today. So I was able to drive. It's like an hour drive. But I do need to tell you, I saw in part of San Diego, these bizarre, let me see if I can show this to you, these bizarre lights. Can anybody tell me what that is? This was on about a half-mile stretch of like the 8 or I think it was the 5. One of the main freeways in San Diego. And you can see here in this picture, they just go on and on and on. So there are like 4 or 5 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, I obviously don't want to take a picture while I'm driving, but this was the most bizarre thing to me. It also said you are entering a speed zone. So I don't think that's just for speeding. What say you? That was one thing that was very, very strange to me. There are a couple things that were really strange to me. I happened to be driving through and driving by UC San Diego. Now, here's what's going on at UC San Diego. And for those that may not know, UC San Diego is one of the major schools that is behind all of the animal torture for, experiments on drugs and all of that. And San Diego itself is just the hotbed of all the biotech and bioengineering and all that stuff. So again, it's just nonstop building that's going on there. But here's what's the other weird thing to me. So not only are these cranes up everywhere in San Diego near the university, but the weirdest thing is that it's the worst roads in the world. Now, I've traveled all over the world. I lived in third world countries. I've never seen roads in a country like the United States this bad. Look at how bad that is. And it's not only the condition of the roads, but you can't even see the lines on the street. So here's an example. Where are the lines on the street? Some brainiacs in the road management system painted, and this is throughout California, at least Southern California, painted the roads with like a reflective paint. When it's sunny outside, you can't see it. It disappears. You can only see it in your rear view mirror because of the light being behind you. It's bizarre. Where are the lane dividers that are painted on the road? It's just the weirdest thing. And then you have roads like this. There you can barely see the lines, but you see that line down the middle here, that line down the middle? You would think that is the lane divider, but you're actually supposed to drive on it. The roads in California are absolutely the worst of the worst of the worst. And let me show you the potholes. I thought I was just going to blow out my tires. It's absolutely stunning. Look at these potholes, these sinkholes. Now this, UC San Diego is right next to La Jolla, which is like one of the premier, probably one of the most expensive areas in all of California, multi-million dollar homes. And this is what's in front of them. This is the street where these multi-million dollar homes are. It's absolutely stunning. Look at this. I don't know if you can see that. It's just, it's hard to see. In the wealthiest part of San Diego, it's just, I'm flabbergasted. And there are a couple other weird things in San Diego today that I'm going to tell you about just as we finish up. Look at these absolute ruts. Now, I could see if this was in, I don't know, some rural area where people had to, we have the highest gasoline taxes in the world to pay for the repair of the roads. Okay, I'm not in the mood for a rant. I'm just telling you how despicable this is. And then you've got these, multi-million dollar homes right on the beach, and that's the road condition right out in front of them. It's stunning. All right. The other weird thing in San Diego today, I wasn't even like in downtown San Diego. As I say, I was in kind of a nice area. And it was so sad to see the number of people wandering around homeless. And the reason why I say they were wandering around is they looked very lost. They looked confused. There was one lady that didn't know if she could step off the corner or not, or where she was. Many people walking around just with backpacks on that looked so downtrodden. My heart just broke for them. And this wasn't in the downtown where people basically live in tents on the city sidewalks and all of that. Now, I do want to say there are many lovely, healthy, I don't know about many, but there are some lovely, healthy Americans that I know that actually are living in their car or on the street. They've chosen to do so, or the conditions have been such that they are doing that. And they are either temporarily trying to save money, or they're in a transition period, or they're looking to get back on their feet. They're not suffering from mental illness. And so I just want to put that on the record, that to not lump everybody into the same category of the homeless. But here's what was the weird thing for me. You know that I am a prepper, and I've got I don't like to talk too much about what I have, but let's just say that every so often I sort through my food, and when it's getting close to being expired, I either use it up or I donate it so that I can refill the pantry. And that's just a very simple tip that a lot of preppers do. You just kind of rotate your things so that you don't end up with, 5-year-old peanut butter or something. I will say that canned food probably lasts forever, even though there's an expiration date on it. And, things that are in glass jars probably are good far past their expiration date. But when it gets close to it, I like to share that with somebody who needs it. Very often I've given it to family or friends, and I'm like, hey, here's a bag of, I like things like artichoke hearts and, anyway, whatever I have that I'm ready to give. So I happen to have several bags full of food that I've been trying to donate. Yes, trying to donate in California with the height of the homeless crisis. And I also have bags full of fresh citrus and things from my own tree that I simply can't use up. Our family is very small, so I want to gift that to others. So I have been going, it's crazy. I've been going to different food pantries that do not want to accept more than one donated bag. They will not take anything that has that is expired, and some of them won't take the fresh produce, and then their hours are so restricted. And I'm not talking about just like volunteer mom and pop. I understand if these are, one-off little places. I'm talking about like the San Diego Food Bank, which, by the way, was closed today. They took an extra day for the holiday. I'm still driving around with a bunch of food in the back of my car. So if anybody knows what I can do with this food, it was the most bizarre thing. And when I was getting one of my healing treatments, I was kind of discussing this with the gal that was assisting me, because I asked her, do you know where I can donate this food? And she said, San Diego's the worst. They basically don't want to take your food. And she said the same with clothing. They barely will take your donated items. And I'm like, well, we kind of chuckled and said, I guess that's a good thing. that there are plenty of people that are donating food. You know me, I like to look on the bright side, but I thought that it was so strange that California is, maybe not California, but at least in San Diego County, that it was so and is so limited and restrictive in terms of where I can donate this food. So I thought that was strange. Let's see. Are those all the strange things I wanted to share with you? The poor homeless that were looked so bereft, and I couldn't really very well give them a can of tomatoes. I know that's not something they could eat, easily. So my heart went out to them. So seeing the decrepitude of the city, the crumbling infrastructure, the increasing homeless, the inability to actually help if you are trying to, all of that was very, very strange for me today. All right. I always have more things that I want to share with you, friends, but let's wrap up for now. I've been doing one video an evening, and they tend to run a little longer, but that way I can take my time and get you all of the information that you need. So thank you everybody for being on board. And I do want to let everybody know that this Friday is my hearing for the lawsuit. I did a video yesterday called What It's Like to Sue the Government. And wow, it is quite a ride. And you probably can understand that I don't want to say too much more in anticipation of Friday, but I do want to let all of you know how very much I appreciate your support through your prayers, your financial gifts, your encouraging emails. It really, really has helped me. Now, I've been a little bit out of my normal routine over the last few weeks, but I promise you that I'm compiling all of the letters that you've been sending me, and I'm going to be sharing more of those letters because you all tell me how much you love when I read those letters and share the gifts that people have, sent me in terms of books and little knickknacks and things. So I will be making that a regular part of the show. So thank you again, everybody. I so appreciate you standing up for your rights. And remember, you can always email support@thehealthyamerican.org with your story ideas. We can't always reply to you immediately or personally, but please know that we do receive and read all of the emails. And then I may just cover one of the stories that you are recommending in an upcoming video. Remember, my goal is to get you out of the spin cycle and into solutions so that you can keep your head above these stormy seas. I'm telling you, friends, there's so much to cover in the news, but I want to keep it in terms of critical thinking, can do, how does this apply to you, and to not be too caught up in things that are, I believe, set out there to create fear, dread, and terror. So I don't want to participate and contribute to any of the terrorism. I want to bring the solutions, the how-tos, the resources, and the remedies. All right, signing off for now, friends. I can't wait to see you in an upcoming video. I'm going to read all of your comments. Thank you to the moderators. Thank you to the Healthy Americans. And thanks for remembering to subscribe or resubscribe and joining me in the afternoons around 5 p.m. Pacific.